The power of vulnerability is often misunderstood. Many people see it as weakness, a chink in the armor that exposes them to judgment, rejection, or criticism. But vulnerability is not weakness, it is the truest expression of courage. It's the willingness to show up and be seen when there are no guarantees of acceptance or approval. And this is precisely what makes it so powerful. When we avoid vulnerability, we deny ourselves the opportunity to connect authentically with others. In tough conversations, this often looks like hiding behind defensiveness, avoiding the subject, or speaking in a way that shields us from discomfort. We might fear that opening up will make us appear inadequate, that sharing our feelings or thoughts will push people away. But paradoxically, the opposite is true. Vulnerability is the foundation of trust, intimacy, and understanding. It is the bridge that allows two people to meet in their shared humanity. Imagine entering a tough conversation with a shield around your heart. Your words might be carefully calculated to protect your pride, or you might say only what you think the other person wants to hear. In doing so, you may avoid conflict in the moment, but you also avoid resolution. The real issues remain buried, and so do the emotions tied to them. Vulnerability, on the other hand, requires putting the shield down. It means saying, this is how I feel, or this is what I need. It's about being honest, even when it's uncomfortable, and trusting that the truth will pave the way for healing or growth. Vulnerability is powerful because it creates space for honesty, not just from you, but from the person you're speaking to. When you lead with vulnerability, you invite the other person to do the same. It signals that the conversation is a safe space for truth, even if that truth is hard to hear. This mutual openness transforms the dynamic of a tough conversation. Instead of becoming a battle of wills, it becomes a collaborative effort to understand and address the issue at hand. It's important to understand that vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing or letting your emotions run unchecked. It's not about dumping everything you feel onto someone else. Rather, it's about being intentional with your honesty. It's saying, I care enough about this relationship and about myself to speak from the heart. This kind of intentional vulnerability is disarming. It cuts through defensiveness and opens the door to compassion. One of the reasons vulnerability feels so risky is that it comes with no guarantees. You can't control how the other person will respond. You might not receive the understanding or apology you're hoping for. But here's the thing, vulnerability isn't about controlling the outcome. It's about showing up anyway. It's about owning your truth and standing in it, regardless of how it's received. In doing so, you reclaim your own power. You're no longer at the mercy of what ifs or fear. You've chosen to be brave, and that bravery has its own reward. Vulnerability also requires self-awareness. You can't be vulnerable if you don't first understand what you're feeling and why. It means pausing before the conversation to ask yourself, what am I really afraid of here? What do I need to say? And what am I hoping to achieve? This clarity not only helps you communicate more effectively, but it also strengthens your resolve. When you know why you're opening up, it becomes easier to take the leap. The power of vulnerability lies in its ability to transform relationships. When you show up authentically, you give the other person permission to do the same. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer just about solving a problem or addressing an issue. It becomes an opportunity for connection, understanding, and growth. Vulnerability invites intimacy, and intimacy strengthens bonds. Even if the outcome of the conversation isn't what you hoped for, the act of being vulnerable can create a deeper sense of respect and trust between you and the other person. In a world that often values appearances over authenticity, vulnerability is a radical act. It's saying, I'm not perfect and I don't have all the answers, but I'm here, and I'm willing to try. This willingness is what makes vulnerability so powerful. It reminds us that we don't have to have it all together to be worthy of love and respect. It shows us that our flaws and fears are not barriers to connection, but pathways to it. Ultimately, vulnerability is about courage. It's about daring to be seen as you are without pretense or armor. It's about trusting that your worth isn't tied to someone else's approval, but to your own willingness to show up and engage with life fully. And when you bring that courage into tough conversations, you not only open the door to resolution, but also to deeper connection and understanding. This is the power of vulnerability, the power to transform fear into courage, distance into closeness, and conflict into growth. Avoidance is a temporary escape that often comes at a much greater cost to anxiety. When we avoid difficult conversations, we may feel a fleeting sense of relief, as though we've sidestepped conflict or discomfort. But that relief is deceptive. The issue doesn't disappear, it lingers, grows, and often mutates into something far worse than it initially was. Avoidance doesn't resolve, it delays. And in that delay, anxiety takes root and thrives. Think about the things we avoid. We avoid conversations that might expose us, hurt us, or require us to confront uncomfortable truths. Maybe it's telling a friend that their behavior has been hurtful, addressing an issue at work with a colleague or boss, or bringing up an unmet need in a relationship. In the moment, it feels safer to push these conversations aside. We tell ourselves we'll deal with it later or hope the problem will resolve on its own. But the reality is that avoidance rarely, if ever, leads to resolution. Instead, it creates a vacuum where uncertainty and fear can grow unchecked. Anxiety is fueled by the unknown. When we avoid addressing something, we're left to fill in the blanks with our assumptions and fears. We replay scenarios in our minds, imagining how the conversation could go wrong or how the other person might react. These mental rehearsals rarely paint an accurate picture. Instead, they magnify our worries and make the situation feel even more daunting. Over time, the weight of what we're avoiding becomes heavier, and the anxiety becomes harder to bear. Avoidance doesn't just amplify anxiety within us, it can also strain our relationships. Unspoken issues have a way of showing up indirectly, even if we think we're keeping them hidden. They manifest as resentment, frustration, or passive-aggressive behavior. The person on the other side may sense that something is wrong, even if they don't know what it is. This unspoken tension creates a rift, a quiet disconnection that grows larger the longer the issue is left unaddressed. In avoiding a single tough conversation, we risk creating an ongoing cycle of misunderstanding and emotional distance. The irony of avoidance is that it often requires more energy than addressing the issue head-on. The mental gymnastics of suppressing our feelings, avoiding triggers, and justifying our inaction are exhausting. We carry the unresolved issue around with us, and it affects other areas of our lives. We might find ourselves more irritable, less focused, or more prone to overthinking. Anxiety doesn't stay confined to the thing we're avoiding, it spills over into our overall well-being. When we avoid tough conversations, we also deny ourselves the opportunity for clarity. The mind is a fertile ground for worst-case scenarios, and without the truth, we're left to imagine all the things that could go wrong. But often, the reality of a conversation is far less intimidating than the stories we tell ourselves about it. Addressing the issue directly allows us to see things as they are, not as we fear they might be. It brings the relief of knowing, even if the outcome isn't perfect. It's also worth recognizing that avoidance sends a message not just to others, but to ourselves. When we avoid a tough conversation, we might think we're preserving peace, but we're also communicating that the issue isn't important enough to address, or worse, that we aren't capable of handling it. This can chip away at our self-esteem over time. Avoidance tells us that we're not brave enough, that our feelings don't matter enough, or that we're not equipped to face challenges. Each avoided conversation reinforces this narrative, making it harder to step into courage the next time. Conversely, addressing a tough conversation, even imperfectly, sends the opposite message. It tells us that we are capable of navigating discomfort and that our voice matters. Each time we face what we fear, we build resilience and confidence. We prove to ourselves that we can handle the uncertainty and vulnerability that come with difficult conversations. This doesn't mean every conversation will go smoothly, but the act of confronting instead of avoiding is a win in itself. It's also important to understand that anxiety thrives in silence. When we keep our worries to ourselves, they grow unchecked. Speaking them aloud, even if only to a trusted friend or confidant, can significantly reduce their power. Naming the thing we're avoiding often makes it feel less overwhelming. And when we take the next step to address it with the person involved, we often find that the anticipation was worse than the reality. Avoidance may feel like a way to protect ourselves, but it ultimately traps us in a cycle of anxiety and inaction. The more we avoid, the more we fear, and the more our fears grow. Breaking this cycle requires stepping into the discomfort of the tough conversation, trusting that facing the issue is the only way to find peace. It's not easy, and it may not always go perfectly, but the cost of avoidance is far greater than the discomfort of engagement. When we choose courage over avoidance, we reclaim our power, reduce our anxiety, and open the door to resolution, understanding, and growth. Clarity is kindness. It may not always feel that way in the moment, but truth delivered with clear intentions is one of the most compassionate acts we can offer to others and to ourselves. When we avoid being clear, especially in difficult conversations, we often do so out of fear. We worry about hurting someone's feelings, making the situation worse, or creating conflict. But the reality is that lack of clarity creates confusion, misunderstanding, and often deeper pain. Clarity is not just a way of communicating, it is a way of honoring the dignity and value of those we engage with. Imagine being on the receiving end of ambiguity. Think about a time when someone wasn't honest with you or left you guessing about where you stood. It's unsettling, isn't it? When people are vague, it leaves us in a space of uncertainty where we're forced to fill in the blanks. Our minds often default to the worst-case scenario, creating unnecessary stress and emotional turmoil. Ambiguity can erode trust and leave lasting wounds, even when it's unintentional. Clarity, on the other hand, respects the other person's right to know the truth. It treats them as capable of handling honesty, even if that honesty is uncomfortable. Clarity requires courage. It asks us to step out of our comfort zone and into vulnerability. Being clear means saying what we mean and meaning what we say, even when it's hard. It's easy to convince ourselves that softening the message or avoiding the topic altogether is kinder, but what we're often doing is protecting ourselves from discomfort rather than serving the other person. True kindness doesn't shy away from the tough moments, it leans into them with integrity and intention. It's about being forthright while still being compassionate. Kindness does not mean sugarcoating the truth to make it more palatable. It means delivering that truth with empathy and respect. Clarity isn't about being harsh or blunt, it's about being honest in a way that honors the relationship and the person involved. For example, telling someone directly but kindly about a behavior that's causing harm is far more respectful than letting it fester and build resentment. The latter may seem easier in the short term, but it damages trust and creates a barrier to authentic connection. Clarity might sting initially, but it also opens the door for healing, understanding, and growth. One of the most significant barriers to clarity is the belief that others should just know what we're thinking or feeling. We assume that our needs or boundaries are obvious, and when they're not met, we become frustrated or hurt. But expecting people to read our minds is unfair and unkind. Clarity is about taking responsibility for our communication. It means stating our needs, boundaries, or concerns explicitly rather than expecting others to interpret unspoken signals. This not only reduces misunderstandings, but also creates a foundation of mutual respect and accountability. In relationships, clarity fosters trust. When people know they can rely on you to be truthful and direct, they feel safe. They don't have to second-guess your words or wonder about your intentions. This kind of trust is invaluable, especially in tough conversations. Even when the truth is hard to hear, it's easier to process and respond to than the murkiness of mixed messages or half-truths. Clarity builds a culture of openness where people feel empowered to express themselves without fear of judgment or retribution. Clarity is also an act of self-respect. When we are clear about our values, boundaries, and feelings, we communicate to others that we take ourselves seriously. We show that we are willing to advocate for our needs and honor our truth, even when it's uncomfortable. This self-respect is contagious. It sets the tone for how others engage with us and encourages them to be equally honest and respectful in return. But clarity doesn't just benefit the recipient of our honesty, it benefits us too. When we are clear in our communication, we free ourselves from the emotional labor of managing someone else's assumptions or expectations. We don't have to carry the weight of unspoken truths or unresolved issues. Clarity lightens our emotional load and allows us to move forward with confidence and peace of mind. It's important to remember that clarity is a skill, not an innate trait. It takes practice and intentionality. It requires us to slow down and think about what we really want to say before we say it. It challenges us to balance honesty with compassion, to speak truth in a way that invites understanding rather than defensiveness. And while it may not always come naturally, the effort is worth it. Each time we choose clarity over ambiguity, we strengthen our relationships and deepen our connection to others and ourselves. Clarity is a gift. It may not always feel like kindness in the moment, especially when it's wrapped in difficult truths, but it is the foundation of healthy, authentic relationships. It tells the other person, I respect you enough to be honest with you. And it tells ourselves, I value my integrity too much to avoid this in the end. Clarity is not just an act of kindness, it's an act of courage, respect, and love. The cost of silence is far greater than we often realize. In the moment, choosing not to speak feels like the safer option. We convince ourselves that staying quiet will preserve the peace, avoid conflict, or spare someone's feelings. But silence, especially in the face of an unresolved issue, carries a weight that grows heavier over time. It creates a ripple effect that impacts not only our relationships, but also our emotional well-being and sense of self. What we don't say doesn't disappear, it festers. And that festering comes with a price. When we choose silence, we may avoid discomfort temporarily, but the unspoken truth lingers in the space between us and the other person. It creates a divide, an invisible wall that separates us. We may think we're keeping things intact by staying silent, but the connection begins to erode. Unspoken words turn into assumptions, and assumptions lead to misunderstandings. Over time, the gap widens and the relationship suffers not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Silence is often a breeding ground for resentment. When we hold back our feelings, needs, or concerns, we might tell ourselves it's for the benefit of the other person. But deep down, a sense of frustration or anger can begin to grow. We start to feel unheard, even though we haven't spoken. We feel unseen, even though we haven't shown our true selves. This internal conflict builds over time, and the resentment can spill out in unexpected ways through passive-aggressive comments, emotional withdrawal, or even outright anger. All of this could have been avoided with a conversation, no matter how difficult it might have been. Another cost of silence is the toll it takes on our authenticity. When we stay quiet about things that matter to us, we deny ourselves the chance to show up fully and honestly in our relationships. Silence forces us to suppress parts of who we are, our thoughts, our feelings, our truths. This suppression chips away at our sense of self. We start to feel disconnected not only from others, but also from ourselves. Each time we choose silence over honesty, we send ourselves the message that our voice doesn't matter, that our needs and feelings are less important than keeping the peace. Over time, this can erode our confidence and self-worth. Silence can also perpetuate cycles of unhealthy behavior. When we don't speak up about something that's bothering us, we inadvertently signal to the other person that their actions are acceptable. They may not even realize there's an issue because we haven't communicated it. This creates a dynamic where the behavior continues unchecked, leading to further frustration and hurt on our part. By staying silent, we deprive both ourselves and the other person of the opportunity to address the issue and grow from it. In this way, silence becomes a barrier to change and growth. The cost of silence isn't just emotional, it can also be physical. The stress of holding in unspoken truths takes a toll on our bodies. Anxiety, tension, and even physical symptoms like headaches or sleeplessness can arise from the internal conflict of wanting to speak but choosing not to. Our bodies carry the burden of our unspoken words, and over time, that burden can manifest in ways that impact our overall health and well-being. It's important to acknowledge that silence is often rooted in fear. We fear the potential fallout of speaking up, rejection, conflict, or damaging the relationship. These fears are valid, but they often exaggerate the risks. While tough conversations can be uncomfortable and even painful, they are rarely as catastrophic as we imagine. And even when they are difficult, they offer something that silence never can: the chance for resolution, understanding, and healing. Speaking up may not always lead to the outcome we hope for, but it at least brings clarity. Silence, on the other hand, keeps us trapped in uncertainty and speculation. There's also a broader societal cost to silence. When we choose not to speak up about issues that matter, whether in our personal lives, workplaces, or communities, we contribute to a culture of avoidance. Silence normalizes the status quo, even when the status quo is harmful or unjust. Our voices have power, not just to address individual conflicts, but also to challenge larger systems and behaviors. Choosing to speak up, even when it's hard, can create a ripple effect of change that silence never will. Breaking the silence requires courage, but it also requires intention. It's not about speaking impulsively or harshly, it's about choosing our words thoughtfully and with care. The goal isn't to wound or accuse, but to bridge the gap that silence has created. It's about inviting connection, understanding, and honesty into a space where there has been distance or tension. This takes effort, and it won't always go perfectly, but the alternative, letting silence continue to erode trust and connection, is far more damaging. Ultimately, the cost of silence is the loss of what could have been. It's the missed opportunities for deeper connection, for growth, for resolving conflict and strengthening relationships. It's the emotional and physical toll of carrying unspoken truths. And it's the regret of looking back and wishing we had found the courage to say what needed to be said. Speaking up isn't easy, but it is necessary. Because while silence may feel safe in the moment, it's a safety that comes with a heavy and lasting price. Courage over comfort, this idea often sounds much simpler than it is. At its core, it is about choosing growth, authenticity, and change over the ease of staying where we are, even if that place isn't serving us. It's about stepping into the unknown, facing fear head-on, and embracing discomfort as the necessary precursor to transformation. This kind of courage isn't the loud, dramatic kind you see in movies. It's quieter, subtler, and often requires us to show up when we'd rather avoid, to act when we'd rather remain still, and to speak when silence seems like the easier choice. Choosing courage over comfort is a practice that redefines how we live, grow, and engage with the world. Comfort is often a trap, a seductive lie that convinces us that staying in familiar, even unhealthy, patterns is safer than the uncertainty of change. We choose comfort because it feels predictable and manageable. But comfort, while it offers short-term relief, never pushes us to become more than we are. It keeps us stuck in cycles of stagnation, where our potential remains dormant. The truth is, while comfort may seem appealing in the moment, it's the challenges, the discomfort, and the uncertainty that push us toward deeper levels of growth and self-discovery. We face the choice between courage and comfort constantly, in big decisions and small moments. It's in the conversations we avoid because we fear conflict. It's in the job we hesitate to apply for because we doubt our abilities. It's in the relationships we stay in out of fear of loneliness, even though they no longer bring us joy. It's in the creative ideas we silence because we worry about rejection. Every time we choose comfort over courage, we trade our potential for the familiar, and we rob ourselves of the opportunity to evolve. Choosing courage doesn't mean we're fearless, it means we're willing to act despite our fear. Fear is a natural human response to uncertainty. It's our brain's way of protecting us from perceived threats. But fear, when left unchecked, can hold us back from the very things that would help us grow. Courage doesn't erase fear, it simply moves forward in spite of it. It's about taking that first step, even when we don't know exactly what will happen next. It's about trusting that the act of moving forward will reveal the strength, resilience, and clarity we need along the way. In this sense, courage is not the absence of fear, but the commitment to act regardless of it. There is also a deep sense of freedom that comes with choosing courage over comfort. When we choose the easier path of comfort, we may feel momentary relief, but we are also confined by our own limitations. We limit our experiences, our growth, and our impact on the world, but when we choose courage, we open ourselves up to possibility. We release the grip of what we know and make space for what could be. We break free from the chains of fear, doubt, and complacency, and in doing so, we unlock the potential for greater joy, success, and fulfillment. One of the key areas where courage is needed is in vulnerability. Vulnerability often feels uncomfortable, but it's also the source of deep connection and intimacy. We avoid vulnerability because it makes us feel exposed, weak, or open to judgment. But when we choose courage and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we invite others to do the same. We create spaces of authenticity where we can truly be seen and heard. Vulnerability may be uncomfortable, but it is the birthplace of trust, love, and creativity. Without it, we live on the surface, never fully engaging with the richness of life. Choosing courage also means we must face the discomfort of change. Change is inherently uncomfortable because it forces us to let go of what we know and step into the unknown. Whether it's changing careers, moving to a new city, or letting go of old habits, change always requires courage. But it's only through change that we can evolve and become the person we are meant to be. Staying in our comfort zones may feel safe, but it also means staying stagnant. We miss the chance to discover new strengths, passions, and possibilities. Change pushes us to explore different paths, and while it's uncomfortable at times, it's also where the magic happens. There's an inherent risk in choosing courage over comfort. We risk failure, rejection, and disappointment. But in that risk lies the possibility of growth and success that we would never experience if we stayed in the comfortable, predictable spaces we know. The reward for choosing courage isn't always immediate, but it's real. It's the reward of becoming someone who no longer hides behind excuses, fear, or complacency. It's the reward of living authentically, of pursuing what truly matters to us, and of embracing the fullness of life. Ultimately, choosing courage over comfort is about living a life of intention. It's about deciding that the short-term discomfort of facing our fears is worth the long-term fulfillment of becoming our truest selves. Comfort might be a tempting refuge, but it's only in the discomfort of courage that we truly find ourselves. And that is a life worth living. Listening with empathy is one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked, ways to build meaningful connections with others. It requires us to go beyond simply hearing words to truly understanding the emotional experience behind them. Empathetic listening means opening ourselves up to the feelings, thoughts, and perspectives of others in a way that acknowledges their humanity and validates their experiences. It's about being fully present in the moment, not just as a passive listener, but as an active participant in someone else's story. In a world where distractions are endless and conversations are often rushed, listening with empathy offers a rare and invaluable gift to those we engage with. Empathy, in its essence, is the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to imagine what it's like to live their life and feel their feelings. But listening with empathy goes beyond just understanding. It's about creating a space where others feel safe enough to share their truth, knowing that their emotions will be heard and respected. Often, people don't need solutions to their problems, they just need to feel understood. The simple act of truly listening to someone can be profoundly healing. It acknowledges their pain, joy, confusion, or excitement without judgment, making them feel valued and seen. But listening with empathy isn't just about understanding someone's words, it's about being attuned to their nonverbal cues, tone, body language, and silences. So much of what we communicate happens without words, and an empathetic listener pays attention to these subtle signals. They notice when someone's voice cracks, when they hesitate before speaking, or when their hands nervously fidget. These cues often reveal deeper emotions than words alone can express. The empathetic listener tunes into these signals with a kind of quiet attentiveness that says, I see you, I hear you, I'm here with you. When we listen with empathy, we create a space for connection that transcends surface-level conversation. We allow ourselves to be open to what someone is truly trying to communicate beyond just the facts. We recognize that emotions are an integral part of our experiences, and we embrace the messiness of human emotion without rushing to fix it or make it go away. The ability to listen in this way can transform relationships because it fosters trust and intimacy. When people feel genuinely heard, they feel safe. And when they feel safe, they are more likely to open up, share more deeply, and connect more authentically. In many ways, listening with empathy is an act of love. It requires vulnerability on our part, as we must momentarily set aside our own thoughts judgments, and reactions in order to fully immerse ourselves in someone else's experience. This act of surrendering our own perspective and embracing another's is deeply humbling. It requires that we let go of our need to solve the problem or provide advice and instead simply be present. This can be difficult because we often equate listening with fixing. We want to help, to offer solutions. But sometimes the best way to help is simply to listen, to be the safe space where someone's feelings can exist without being rushed or invalidated. Empathy also means listening without judgment. It's all too easy to listen with the intention of assessing or evaluating the person speaking, filtering their words through our own lens of values, experiences, or biases. But truly empathetic listening means suspending judgment and allowing the other person to express themselves fully, even if we don't agree with what they're saying. By creating this non-judgmental space, we allow others to be their authentic selves without fear of being misunderstood or criticized. This kind of acceptance and respect allows for deeper, more meaningful communication. Listening with empathy also involves patience. It's tempting, especially in fast-paced conversations, to jump in with our own thoughts or solutions. But when we listen empathetically, we resist the urge to interrupt, to finish sentences, or to steer the conversation in our direction. We allow the speaker to unfold their thoughts at their own pace, even if it takes longer than we expect. In this way, empathy and patience go hand in hand. We demonstrate empathy by offering the space and time for the other person's emotions to be heard fully without rushing them to get to the point or conclude the conversation. Another powerful aspect of empathetic listening is its ability to reduce loneliness. People often feel isolated in their struggles, believing that no one truly understands what they are going through. By listening with empathy, we show that we are willing to understand, that we are here to walk beside them in their pain, confusion, or joy. It offers a sense of connection and solidarity, knowing that someone cares enough to not only hear the words, but to feel the emotions beneath them. This connection can be a lifeline for those who feel unseen or unheard. Listening with empathy also requires self-awareness. It's easy to get lost in our own emotions or perspectives when someone is sharing something deeply personal, but true empathy means recognizing our own feelings without allowing them to overshadow the other person's experience. It's about being fully present for someone else without turning the conversation inward, making it about us. This requires us to have enough emotional regulation and awareness to hold space for the other person's emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them or rushing to provide our own responses. In a world where it can be difficult to find real human connection, listening with empathy offers an antidote to isolation, misunderstanding, and division. It has the power to build bridges between people, to heal wounds, and to create spaces where vulnerability is welcomed and nurtured. It is, at its core, an act of care for others, care for relationships, and care for the emotional well-being of those around us. And when we listen with empathy, we also honor our own humanity, recognizing that we are all, at times, in need of someone who will truly hear us. Naming the emotion is a practice that often goes unnoticed in our daily lives, yet it is one of the most powerful tools we have for understanding and processing our feelings. Emotions can often feel overwhelming, confusing, or elusive, and when we don't have the language to describe what we're experiencing, it can create a sense of disconnection or chaos within ourselves. By naming our emotions, we create a sense of clarity and control, allowing us to navigate the internal landscape of our emotional world with more intention and awareness. Emotions, by their very nature, are complex and fluid. They can shift from one moment to the next, often in response to external triggers or internal shifts in thought. At times, emotions can be so intense that they become all-consuming, making it difficult to even identify what we are feeling. Are we angry? Sad? Confused? Anxious? Each of these feelings can feel so overwhelming that they blur together, creating a sense of emotional fog. This is where naming our emotions becomes crucial. By pausing and reflecting on the feeling at hand, we can begin to untangle the mess of emotions swirling inside us. The process of naming our emotions gives us a sense of power over them. Emotions, when left unnamed, can feel like they have control over us, pushing us toward reactions we might not fully understand or want. When we label our emotions, we step into a position of agency. We shift from being passive recipients of our feelings to active participants in processing and understanding them. This act of naming helps us distance ourselves from the emotion, giving us the space to observe it without being consumed by it. Instead of saying, "I am angry," we can say, "I am feeling anger." This simple shift in language helps to break the identification with the emotion itself, reducing its hold over us and allowing us to step back and evaluate it more objectively. Naming our emotions also creates a bridge to self-awareness. The more precisely we can identify what we are feeling, the more we can understand the root cause of those emotions. Are we angry because someone has wronged us? Are we feeling sadness because of a loss or change? Are we anxious because we fear the unknown or feel out of control? The more specific we can be about our emotions, the more insight we gain into what's going on beneath the surface. This insight is crucial for our emotional well-being because it helps us respond to our feelings in healthy ways. Rather than acting on impulse or suppressing our emotions, naming them allows us to process them and decide how to respond consciously. Moreover, naming emotions helps us build emotional intelligence, which is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions in a way that is constructive and positive. Emotional intelligence is key to maintaining healthy relationships, making sound decisions, and handling stress effectively. When we can identify and name our emotions, we are better equipped to communicate them to others. For example, if we are feeling frustrated, instead of lashing out or withdrawing, we can say, "I'm feeling frustrated because I'm not being heard," which opens up a conversation and fosters understanding. In this way, naming our emotions not only helps us understand ourselves, but also improves our interactions with others. But naming our emotions doesn't only help us in moments of distress or discomfort, it also plays a significant role in recognizing and amplifying positive emotions. We don't always take the time to acknowledge the joy, gratitude, or contentment we experience in our lives. By naming these positive emotions, we reinforce the experience and create a deeper connection to those feelings. For instance, when we feel gratitude, naming it, saying, "I feel deeply grateful for this moment," helps us savor the emotion and encourages us to cultivate more of it. It reminds us to pause, appreciate, and embrace the positive moments rather than letting them slip by unnoticed. However, the process of naming our emotions is not always easy. It can feel vulnerable to sit with our feelings and give them a name, especially when those emotions are uncomfortable or painful. In a culture that often values strength over vulnerability, we may feel reluctant to express our emotions, fearing judgment or weakness. Yet it's through naming and acknowledging our emotions that we can begin to heal and grow. Emotions like sadness, fear, and grief are natural parts of the human experience, and by naming them, we validate their existence rather than suppressing or denying them. When we allow ourselves the space to feel and name these emotions, we release the grip they may have on us and begin to process them in a healthier way. It's also important to recognize that emotions are not always static or easy to define. Sometimes we may experience a mixture of emotions such as confusion, guilt, or ambivalence. In these instances, naming the emotion might require more exploration, and it can be helpful to give ourselves permission to sit with the uncertainty of not having a clear answer right away. Naming the emotion in these moments could be something as simple as saying, "I'm feeling unsure," or "I'm feeling torn," which acknowledges the complexity of the emotional experience. Naming emotions also fosters a deeper connection with others. When we are able to name our own feelings, it creates space for others to do the same. In relationships, whether personal or professional, when we can articulate our emotions clearly and with empathy, we invite others to be open and vulnerable as well. This shared openness builds trust and intimacy, creating an environment where emotional honesty is welcomed and supported. Ultimately, the practice of naming our emotions is an act of self-respect and self-compassion. It is a way of honoring our feelings and giving them the space they need to be expressed. It allows us to step into a place of emotional awareness, where we can process our experiences, make informed choices, and respond to the world with greater clarity and intention. In the rush of daily life, taking the time to name our emotions may seem small, but in reality, it's a profoundly transformative practice that empowers us to live more fully and authentically. Practice makes progress is a simple yet powerful statement that emphasizes the transformative power of consistent effort over time. While many people are familiar with the saying, practice makes perfect, the idea that progress is the ultimate goal offers a deeper, more sustainable approach to personal growth. Perfection, after all, is an elusive and often unrealistic ideal, but progress is something tangible, achievable, and rewarding. The journey toward improvement is what shapes us, teaches us resilience, and equips us with the skills we need to succeed. At the heart of the phrase, practice makes progress, is the understanding that mastery doesn't come overnight. It's a process, one that requires dedication, patience, and perseverance. Often, people want to see results immediately or after a short period of effort, but the truth is, mastery takes time, and setbacks are an inevitable part of that journey. When we focus on progress instead of perfection, we shift our mindset from a destination-oriented approach to one that values the incremental steps we take each day. The idea of progress encourages a growth mindset, a concept introduced by psychologist Carol Dweck. A growth mindset is the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through hard work, learning, and persistence. People with this mindset view challenges as opportunities to grow, rather than obstacles to avoid. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, they see them as valuable lessons in the learning process. The more we practice something, the more we refine our skills and understanding. Each effort, each small step, is a part of a larger journey toward improvement. In many areas of life, whether it's learning a new skill, pursuing a career goal, or developing personal habits, progress is not always linear. There are days when things seem to flow effortlessly, and then there are days when every step forward feels like a struggle. The key to making progress during those challenging times is consistency. Even when it feels like we're not advancing, the act of showing up and putting in the effort is still moving us forward. It's easy to become discouraged when we don't see immediate results, but persistence is what builds the foundation for eventual success. Each practice session, no matter how small or imperfect, builds momentum and gets us closer to where we want to be. One of the most important aspects of practice makes progress is that it encourages self-compassion. When we embrace the idea of progress rather than perfection, we allow ourselves room to be human. We accept that we will stumble, make mistakes, and experience setbacks along the way. And we recognize that those mistakes are part of the process, not an indication that we aren't capable or worthy. By reframing our approach to personal growth, we stop beating ourselves up over imperfections and instead celebrate the progress we've made. This self-compassion becomes a source of motivation, driving us to continue even when the path gets difficult. The notion of progress also encourages us to break big goals into manageable steps. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when faced with a massive task or a long-term ambition. But by focusing on incremental progress, we make the process feel more achievable. If you want to run a marathon, for example, you wouldn't start by running 26 miles on your first day. You would begin with short runs, gradually increasing your distance over time. Each small victory, whether it's running a mile without stopping or shaving seconds off your time, represents progress. This approach doesn't just apply to physical goals, it's relevant in every area of life. When we break our goals into smaller, actionable steps, we can track our progress more easily, stay motivated, and celebrate our achievements along the way. Progress, rather than perfection, also allows us to remain flexible. Life is unpredictable, and circumstances often change in ways we don't expect. Being attached to the idea of perfection can make us rigid, leaving little room for adaptation or growth. However, when we focus on progress, we give ourselves the freedom to adjust our course as needed. We don't have to be perfect to be successful, we just need to keep moving forward, even if that means taking a different path than we originally planned. Progress is about forward movement, not a fixed destination. Another important aspect of practicing for progress is that it allows for growth in our emotional and mental capacities. When we pursue something with dedication and commitment, we develop resilience, self-discipline, and patience. These qualities are not only important for achieving specific goals, but also for navigating life's challenges. We become more adept at handling setbacks, dealing with failure, and managing stress. The process of working toward progress helps us develop a sense of inner strength and determination that can carry us through difficult times. The more we practice, whether it's with a skill, habit, or mindset, the more we cultivate the mental and emotional fortitude to overcome obstacles and stay focused on our goals. The key to long-term progress is consistency. It's easy to get excited about a new project or goal at first, but enthusiasm can fade when results don't materialize quickly enough. But true progress is made when we show up day after day, regardless of how we feel. Consistency is often more important than raw talent or bursts of inspiration. It's the quiet, everyday efforts that accumulate over time and lead to significant transformation. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is lasting change. The act of practicing consistently, even in small ways, creates the conditions for growth and achievement. Ultimately, practice makes progress is a mindset that empowers us to keep going, even when the path seems difficult or unclear. It reminds us that growth is a process, and it's the daily effort, no matter how imperfect, that leads us toward the person we want to become. In a world that often glorifies instant success and perfection, the idea of progress allows us to focus on the journey, to celebrate our small wins, and to cultivate the patience and persistence necessary to achieve lasting change. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches us that progress, not perfection, is the true measure of success. Setting boundaries and intentions is a vital practice for preserving emotional well-being, fostering healthy relationships, and ensuring personal growth. While it may seem like an act of self-protection, setting boundaries is, in fact, a form of self-respect and self-care. When we clearly define what is acceptable and what is not in our lives, we create space for our needs, desires, and values to be honored. Likewise, setting intentions helps us align our actions with our deeper goals and aspirations, guiding us on a path of conscious living. Together, these practices allow us to cultivate the life we want to live while maintaining our integrity and peace of mind. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define where we end and others begin. They protect our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual space, ensuring that we don't overextend ourselves or allow others to impose on us in ways that are harmful. Setting boundaries is not about building walls to shut people out. Rather, it is about creating a safe and sustainable environment for ourselves. It allows us to show up authentically in our relationships, knowing that we are prioritizing our well-being without guilt or shame. Too often, we neglect to set boundaries because we fear rejection, confrontation, or letting others down. However, this avoidance can lead to burnout, resentment, and a loss of self-identity. When we fail to communicate our limits, we allow others' needs and demands to take precedence over our own. Over time, this can leave us feeling drained, unappreciated, and disconnected from our true selves. By setting clear boundaries, we protect our emotional and mental health, ensuring that we have the energy and space to nurture our own needs. Setting boundaries starts with understanding what we need and value. It requires a deep level of self-awareness and self-reflection. Without knowing what matters most to us, it's difficult to identify where we need to draw the line. For example, we may need boundaries in our relationships, work, or social interactions. We may need to limit the amount of time we spend with certain people, set expectations around communication, or decide what level of access others have to our personal time and energy. Boundaries are deeply personal and can evolve over time as our needs change. One of the most powerful aspects of setting boundaries is that it allows us to honor our time and energy. We can only give so much of ourselves before we start to feel depleted. By setting clear limits, we communicate to others and to ourselves that our time, attention, and energy are valuable. We create the space to focus on what matters most, whether that's our family, our passions, our health, or our work. This doesn't mean that we become rigid or inflexible, but rather that we recognize our own worth and take responsibility for maintaining our balance. Intentions, on the other hand, serve as the compass that directs our actions toward meaningful outcomes. While boundaries protect us from what doesn't serve us, intentions help us define what we want to create in our lives. They are the guiding principles that influence the choices we make, the goals we set, and the way we interact with the world. Setting clear intentions allows us to live with purpose, making decisions that are aligned with our values and long-term desires. An intention is not merely a wish or a goal, it is a commitment to showing up in a certain way. For instance, setting the intention to be more present in our relationships means making a conscious choice to listen attentively, to engage fully, and to create space for connection. It's not just about what we want to achieve, but about how we want to feel and how we want to move through the world. When we set intentions, we are actively participating in shaping the trajectory of our lives. The process of setting intentions requires mindfulness. It requires us to be present with ourselves, to check in with our deeper needs, and to consider what truly matters. Intentions aren't about striving for perfection, they are about guiding our actions toward a higher purpose. They help us stay grounded when distractions arise and give us clarity when we face difficult decisions. By setting intentions, we are not only defining what we want to create, but also determining the energy and attitude we bring to our endeavors. When boundaries and intentions are combined, they work together to create a life that is both authentic and aligned with our values. Boundaries give us the space we need to protect ourselves from external pressures, while intentions ensure that our actions remain aligned with our deeper purpose. Boundaries without intentions can feel defensive, while intentions without boundaries can feel overwhelming. Together, they create a balance that allows us to pursue our dreams and aspirations while maintaining our well-being. One of the most important aspects of both setting boundaries and intentions is the need for consistency. Setting boundaries is not a one-time event, it is an ongoing practice that requires us to communicate and reinforce our limits. Similarly, intentions need to be revisited regularly to ensure that we are staying true to our values and adjusting them as needed. This consistency allows us to build a life that is not only successful but fulfilling. It is also essential to recognize that setting boundaries and intentions requires self-compassion. There will be times when we falter or struggle to uphold our boundaries, and there will be moments when our intentions feel elusive or difficult to maintain. In these moments, it's important to offer ourselves grace and patience. Growth is a process, and we are constantly evolving. The key is to remain committed to our path, even when challenges arise. Setting boundaries and intentions is a practice, not a perfect science. It requires trial and error, reflection, and recalibration. Ultimately, setting boundaries and intentions empowers us to live with greater intention and integrity. It allows us to protect our time, energy, and emotions, while also ensuring that we are actively moving toward our goals and living in alignment with our values. These practices help us honor ourselves and our needs while cultivating meaningful relationships with others. In a world that is constantly pulling us in different directions, setting boundaries and intentions serves as a compass that keeps us grounded and aligned with our truest selves. Honesty is often viewed as a personal virtue, a reflection of character that we strive to uphold in our interactions with others. But honesty is not just an isolated act, it has a profound ripple effect that extends far beyond the immediate situation. When we practice honesty, we are not simply telling the truth in a given moment, we are creating an environment where trust, authenticity, and connection can flourish. The impact of honesty spreads outwards, influencing relationships, communities, and even the broader world in ways that can be both subtle and transformative. At its core, honesty cultivates trust. Trust is the foundation of all meaningful relationships, whether personal, professional, or societal. When we are honest with others, we create a space where they feel safe to be vulnerable, to express themselves freely, and to reciprocate that trust. The ripple effect begins the moment we speak truthfully, allowing others to trust us and, in turn, begin trusting others more openly. In this way, honesty doesn't just enhance individual relationships, it fosters a broader culture of openness and mutual respect. When we choose to be honest, we set an example for those around us, inspiring them to act with integrity and transparency as well. This ripple effect of trust expands even further when honesty is practiced in groups, teams, or communities. In environments where honesty is valued, people are more likely to collaborate effectively, share ideas without fear of judgment, and resolve conflicts with understanding. In contrast, dishonesty breeds suspicion, fear, and misunderstanding, creating walls between people and obstructing cooperation. When individuals prioritize honesty in their actions, they contribute to a culture that values communication and transparency. This, in turn, nurtures a sense of belonging and unity, as everyone feels that their voices are heard and respected. The ripple effect of honesty strengthens the very fabric of our communities and organizations, allowing them to thrive. Honesty also plays a critical role in self-awareness and personal growth. When we are honest with ourselves about our feelings, our needs, and our desires, we gain clarity and insight into our true selves. This internal honesty allows us to make decisions that are in alignment with our values and aspirations. It prevents us from living in denial or suppressing emotions, which can lead to discontentment or inner conflict. By embracing honesty within ourselves, we open the door to self-improvement, as we can more clearly identify areas of growth and take the necessary steps toward positive change. This personal growth, when shared with others, becomes part of the ripple effect, encouraging those around us to reflect on their own lives and take steps toward greater authenticity. In a larger sense, the ripple effect of honesty can extend to societal and cultural transformation. History has shown us that many significant movements for change were driven by individuals or groups who were willing to speak out, often at great personal risk, about the truth of their experiences. Whether it was the civil rights movement, the fight for gender equality, or the exposure of corruption in political systems, honesty has played a central role in shifting the collective consciousness. When people are brave enough to speak the truth, even in the face of adversity, they inspire others to do the same. This collective honesty has the power to spark revolutions, challenge oppressive systems, and create a more just and equitable world. The ripple effect of honesty in these instances is not just a personal benefit, it is a catalyst for social and political change. On a more intimate level, honesty can transform individual interactions and emotional experiences. When we are truthful with those closest to us, whether it's a partner, family member, or friend, we invite deeper connection and understanding. Honesty eliminates the barriers that often exist between people, the misunderstandings, the assumptions, the hidden fears. It allows for real intimacy, where people can share their vulnerabilities without fear of judgment or rejection. This openness fosters a sense of emotional security, making it possible to navigate the complexities of relationships with greater empathy and compassion. In this way, the ripple effect of honesty not only strengthens relationships, but also deepens our capacity for love and connection. However, it is important to recognize that honesty, while essential, can also be challenging. There are times when being honest feels uncomfortable or even risky, especially when the truth has the potential to hurt or disrupt. In these moments, it is crucial to practice honesty with compassion and tact, taking into account the feelings of others and the timing of our words. Honesty is not about being brutally direct or harsh, it's about expressing truth in a way that fosters understanding and growth. It is possible to be honest without causing unnecessary harm, and when we approach honesty with care and empathy, the ripple effect becomes one of healing and reconciliation, rather than hurt and division. Moreover, the ripple effect of honesty extends into the professional realm as well. In the workplace, honesty can foster a culture of accountability, transparency, and collaboration. When leaders are honest about challenges, goals, and expectations, they set a tone of openness that encourages employees to engage more fully and take ownership of their roles. Likewise, when employees are honest about their struggles or concerns, they create opportunities for problem solving and innovation. The trust that is built through honest communication leads to more effective teams, better decision making, and a stronger sense of shared purpose. In our digital age, where information is constantly shared and consumed, honesty also plays a critical role in creating a sense of integrity and authenticity online. With the rise of social media and digital platforms, there is a temptation to present curated versions of ourselves that may not align with our true feelings or experiences. However, honesty in our digital interactions can help to combat the superficiality and inauthenticity that often pervade these spaces. By sharing our true selves online, our struggles, our successes, our genuine thoughts, we can inspire others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of authenticity that transcends the digital divide. Ultimately, the ripple effect of honesty is far-reaching. It begins with the simple act of telling the truth and radiates outward, affecting not only our personal lives, but also our relationships, communities, and society as a whole. When we choose honesty, we create an environment where trust and connection can flourish. We build stronger relationships, foster deeper self-awareness, and contribute to a more just and compassionate world. The power of honesty is undeniable, and its ripple effect continues to shape the lives of those around us in ways both seen and unseen. Honesty creates a profound ripple effect that extends beyond individual interactions. By practicing honesty, we build trust, foster deeper connections, and encourage a culture of openness and authenticity. This ripple effect strengthens relationships, promotes personal growth, and contributes to societal change, inspiring others to act with integrity. While honesty can be challenging, it is most impactful when delivered with compassion, creating understanding and emotional security. In both personal and professional realms, honesty fosters transparency, accountability, and collaboration. Ultimately, embracing honesty empowers us to create positive, lasting change, making our relationships and communities stronger and more genuine.